So check it out. It's Friday morning. It is time for another episode of the About Mansfield Consumer Advice series. I'm Steve Casillo, and you know what? Today is we have moved down the hall. We moved down the hall about 14 hours ago, yesterday. And so if there's a little echo to my voice because the sound blankets are not up yet, we literally are in a brand new studio about 200 feet from where we used to be. But as I mentioned on the beginning of every podcast episode, we're broadcasting from the Cellmark Studios, and again, we appreciate Cellmark for the opportunity to broadcast our episodes, our podcasts from in the studio today, as we do every Friday. Let me go ahead and bring him in. That would be Phillip Washington Jr. Today's topic, as we normally do on the Wealth Building Made Simple podcast, your podcast, which you just broadcasted live on LinkedIn. We take that topic and we present that topic on the About Mansfield Consumer Advice series. Today's topic is 5 ways to invest in podcasting. And so let's just get into it. Number one, I
gotta give my list so I can go in order.
Got to get his list. All right.
The way that the first one is the way that I've done it. You have a business, you are finding it harder and harder for people to answer your calls. People don't answer doors anymore. Magazines and stuff are not relevant to the current generation if that's who you're selling to. And so you're like, how do I find more sales? Walks in podcasting, right? And I'm an example of somebody. I cold call. I built the business cold calling. I built the business door knocking. So I've done it successfully. Then I was like, hey, new generation, it's not working. What's the new way? Podcasting. And so Stonehill Wealth Management was built on the back of creating content. And it is cold calling was next to non-existent in this business. It was from podcasting. And which actually was like the funnest way to build a business. Yeah. Right? It was way funner than cold calling, and it puts you in a position of chasing clients to attracting clients, which is a fun position to be in.
Well, as you mentioned on your podcast earlier today, that you used to spend 2 to 3 hours a day creating content as opposed to 2 to 3 hours a day cold calling. Creating 2 to 3 hours of content, you may be reaching more people with your content.
Definitely more people.
Than one call at a time.
Absolutely more than those people. And the people you reach actually want to hear the content. I mean, that's the biggest difference is like when I was cold calling, you're chasing folks that may or may not be interested. When somebody consumes my content on LinkedIn or Instagram or my podcast feed or from my email list, right, which I explain how to line all that up on the course, phillipwashingtonjr.com. But when you have it all laid out there, those are people who actually, like, when they're consuming it, they want to consume it, which is a whole different sales process.
Right. I mean, that's the purpose of cold calling, is that you're actually reaching out to people who may or may not want to hear what you have to say versus the title that has attracted someone to actually tune in and either listen or watch a video. What's number 2 on your list?
Number 2 is use it to market, create a content production company. So similar to what Podcast Mansfield is.
Yeah.
Right. There are just as many businesses that want to advertise on TV, radio, and magazine today. There's going to be that many businesses over the next decade or two that are going to want to advertise in the digital age because that's where everybody who's of this new generation hangs out. Right. I mean, so the earlier you are in creating content and being the production company for those businesses, the bigger you're going to be. I mean, I get to kind of the further thought process in a later part, but creating content.
and so with the amount of content, I've noticed this with my own podcast. The more content that we put out there, the amount of listens rises faster. And I think now you're up to your podcast itself 700 episodes.
Yeah, I'm over 700 episodes.
And we are only at I think we're coming up on 150.
I mean, that's still a lot for podcasts. Most podcasts don't pass like what 10. I mean, it's something like 80. I'm just making up a number, but something like 80% of the podcasts aren't over 10.
Yep.
So,
what's number 3 on your list?
Number 3 is sell products for other companies. And so, what you'll find is just some companies are gonna want to wake up to it, but they're not gonna want to, create a show or do anything. They got more money than time, or more money than than faith, and they're like, I just want to pay somebody to do it for me. So, and by the way, there's nothing new under the sun. Like this is what Oprah does, right?
Yeah.
This is what The Rock does with with everything. The Rock is a brand. This is what Tim Ferriss does for authors and people who want to sell books. It's what TV networks did. It's what radios do. The sponsors of my podcast are local business people that didn't really want to get in the nitty gritty of creating a podcast and saw that mine had already been a genre that is attractive for them, and they just said, I'd rather just partner with Phillip's podcast.
And in full disclosure, that's
what I'm doing on your podcast.
That's actually what the consumer advice series is that whether you're the chiropractor, the CPA, the tree expert, we're bringing on a trademark attorney here in the next couple of weeks, and that these are people who have invested in my podcast to come on and do these 10-minute nuggets of information on a weekly basis. And yeah, so market other businesses.
Market other businesses.
What's number 4 on your list?
You can just invest in stocks of companies playing that space. So you got the Apples, the Spotifys, social media sites. Think of them like, okay, what are the new media companies? And then invest in those. That's a way to participate as well.
All right. And then number 5.
And number 5 is you can be like Universal Music Group, which has a almost 100-year history from when they started as Decca in the UK, transitioned to America, then back out over the world, where you actually like at the foundation of music or films or everything is money. Like, right? So if you think of a company and you have VCs that fund the company, when you have shows or entertainment or media, you have the money at the core of it that invest in the different projects to create the returns. And so Universal Music Group is like, I think of it like a hedge fund or a venture capital firm for entertainment, right? That has not been built yet in the podcast media space, or not. There's no big conglomerates yet, because those companies have to put to work billions. So podcasts are too small for that. But I mean, if you have, if you had $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, I mean, you can greenlight, a few shows, right? Or take some money and take ownership in a few businesses, and then use that money to grow their business via content and media, and be paid with a percentage of the company ownership to do that. So it's wide open, because every new industry, starts fresh, is very spread out. It gets consolidated, right?
Yep.
And then it gets separated again, remade, consolidated. So we're at the very beginning of it. But go Wikipedia Universal Music Group and kind of go through the history of it, and you'll be like, oh man, yeah, we're at the beginning of this.
And so to bring this all back to consumer and small business and medium-sized and large business, that something that you had mentioned on your podcast earlier today is that you can get into the marketing business of podcasting now, or you can get into it 5 years from now, wishing that you had got into it 5 years ago.
Yes, I can't tell you how many people I meet today say, man, I wish I would have known about Instagram, in 2013, 2014. And I'm like, well, listen, like, what's done is done. Do podcasting, right? because you're gonna be wishing the same thing, and they'll go, yeah, but, and I'm like, listen, you like, there's always something new on the horizon, right? You see it when you stop looking backwards, right? When you focus on the present, when you see what's in front of you, then you can see the opportunities. But if you keep looking back, going, oh, I wish I would have saw that, you're like missing what's right in front of you.
That's true. And the About Mansfield podcast is a testament to the success of podcasting and the success of creating content and putting it out there and putting it out there. I had just posted yesterday on the About Mansfield Facebook page that we just reached 40,000 listens. Our content for last month is up 100% from the month before. And that doesn't mean that people are listening to the current episode. They're listening to one of 150 episodes. And a year from now, they'll be listening to one of 250 episodes. The more content that's out there, the more people are listening. And it's an amazing thing. So if you are a small business, a medium, a large business, and you get into the podcast game, don't get out after 10, 15 going, it's not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
That it took me 2 years to build an audience. And I don't know about you, but probably the same thing.
Yeah. It takes patience. Like anything else in life, patience and the fire.
That's
patience and the fire. Embrace it.
If someone wanted to reach out to Phillip Washington Jr., if they have an idea for a podcast or they wanted to maybe dip their toes in the water, how do they reach out to you?
Best way is go to phillipwashingtonjr.com, right? That's my course, podcast roadmap for monetizing a podcast, which includes, 3 of these options.
Yeah.
Check it out. It's relatively cheap for the amount of money that's out there, and the part, and I'm saying this without ego, like I built it because I literally did it, right? And there was not anybody out there that I could go to who'd actually done it, not from an advertising standpoint, but from like a local business standpoint that had a course. So I built it for local businesses owners to do it.
So quit cold calling and get in the game.
Absolutely.
Phillip Washington Jr., phillipwashingtonjr.com. We do this every Friday, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me, Steve.